Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Welcome to this webinar session. I'm Tony Schönenberger. I'm the Executive Chairman of STARS. STARS, as many of you know, is a global platform for dialogue to discuss developments which will impact the society as a whole, but particularly our organizations and our businesses in the next couple of years. In this context, I'm pleased to inform you that STARS is preparing two symposia in Singapore and in Switzerland, and a study tour to China, to Shenzhen and Guangzhou, under the title Breaking Traditions, Learning from Global Champions, Unicorns and Startups. Please visit our website for further information. Now, no doubt, geopolitical, geoeconomic, and particularly geotechnological intelligence is a must for any leader in business and society. So today, we are starting a new webinar series on China called From Copycat China to Innovation China. And we have the great privilege today to talk to Peter Cheng. Welcome, Peter. Great to have you on this session. Peter Cheng.
Hello, Tony.
Peter Cheng was born in Taiwan. He lived and worked in the US, in the Silicon Valley, and he lives now in Shanghai, China. Peter is a serial entrepreneur and seasoned executive who had worked for 3 startups and 4 Fortune 500 companies. Peter is the founding managing partner of Eminence Ventures, based in Shanghai. Founded in 2017, the company focuses on the early stage of next generation IT venture capital opportunities driven by generative AI. So Peter, we are very much looking forward to your insights.
Thank you for having me.
We have approximately 30 minutes to discuss with Peter. If you have any questions for Peter, please use the Q&A feature below to type in your questions. And I would like to encourage all of you to do it as quickly as possible, because we will be running out of time very, very quickly. So let's start, Peter, with a couple of questions from my side.
Okay.
Now, once a copycat economy, now China is a center of innovation. Look at EVs, biotech, green tech, DeepSeek, just to name a few developments. Business leaders in the West acknowledge that they are the followers. Would you agree to this?
I don't think China is a follower anymore. So I have read quite a few articles recently. For example, everybody think that US and Taiwan are used to intern at TSMC, right? And obviously, in terms of foundry business, TSMC is still ahead. But you'll be surprised, according to a research report by Georgetown University, between 2018 and 2023, the Chinese scholars published over 160,000 chip-related papers, semiconductor-related papers. And it's more than the next 3 countries combined. The next 3 countries are US, Japan, and India. So you'll be surprised. I thought that, China is behind on semiconductor, but if you look at chip-related papers, China is leading. And same apply in biotech and a lot of other areas. And then I think in generative AI, everybody knows about DeepSeek, right? And recent investment from Benchmark into a Chinese startup called Manus AI. They are in the general purpose AI agent space. And the list just go on. So I would say Right now, China is very different. And a couple of days ago, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, is saying that, not selling chips to China is giving up on this $50 billion, semiconductor AI business. And then it's pretty much giving all the business to a company called Huawei. I think every time when there is no new technology, it just levels the playing field. For example, it happened on solar panel. It happened on EV batteries. Now CATL has about 38% market share. BYD has another 17% market share. So two Chinese companies have more than 55% of the market share of the EV batteries. Not to mention EV, again, for generative AI, and in the future, humanoid. Every time when there's a new technology, it just levels the playing field. So Chinese entrepreneur can compete against their global counterpart on an equal footing.
I just read in the news that Toyota, Nissan, and Honda are partnering with Chinese technology companies. So, for instance, Toyota is equipping the car with Huawei's Harmony OS, and Honda plans to equip vehicles with artificial intelligence from DeepSeek in order to respond to voice commands. So that is the new trend, obviously.
Yeah. And also, interestingly, I just read another article about Uber, right? Uber is the number one, cab hailing application. Now, Uber is partnering with two Chinese autonomous driving companies. One is called Pony.ai, and the other one is called WeRide. And both of them are listed in the US stock exchanges. And Uber is partnering with both.
Yes.
And so it's very interesting, right? Partnering with Chinese autonomous driving companies.
Very interesting, yes. Now, Peter, in the context of today's geopolitical and obviously geoeconomic tensions, including particularly the tariff policies,
yes.
How do you see the impact on innovation in the next couple of years?
I think innovation will probably be a little bit polarized. So in the sense that I think for a lot of entrepreneurs who want to innovate, they don't want to be caught in between. They don't want to be forced to pick sides. But that's not the reality nowadays. So some of the entrepreneurs, they have to pick one side over the other. So you cannot really be a Chinese company and then doing business in the US, or you cannot really be a US company and doing business in China. And I don't think that's a good thing for either country. So it will be great going back to the nice old days. You don't have to deal with those geopolitics. And then a lot of you probably heard about the story that a Harvard chemistry professor called Charles Lieber just joined Tsinghua University, and then a US professor from Harvard just joined Tsinghua University in China because he was found guilty of working with one of the Chinese universities before, and then after retirement from Harvard, and he decided to go to this side. So, and then we've seen situations on both, and some of the Chinese entrepreneurs, they have to pick sides. And I think that's kind of the impact. And I don't think for the long term, for the tech innovation, that's the bad thing.
Yes, yes. Generally speaking, Peter, in the US and in Europe, actually, innovation traditionally works through research at universities, then patents, then venture capital.
Yes.
Chinese innovation, however, is applied, I would guess, is more market-driven. It's much faster and benefits from a powerhouse in engineering and supply chain efficiency. Is this the major reason for the success of Chinese innovation?
I think that's one of the reasons, because China is very good at building applications. So if you look at a lot of applications, China's applications just like outpacing some of those in the West. So, but I don't think Chinese entrepreneurs consider that as a limitation. I think more and more we can see they actually go down to the infrastructure layer. DeepSea is a wonderful example, right? They launched their product, they open weight, they open source, they told the world how they accomplish what they accomplished step by step, right? And it's large language model on the infrastructure layer. And so, and obviously Huawei is also building the infrastructure. They are building the infrastructure, the 5G in the future, 6G. So it goes beyond application. But definitely, when it comes to applications, Chinese entrepreneurs have some advantages because there are just a lot of engineers and low-cost engineers, software engineers. And the other day, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, was actually telling the Congress that 50% of the AI researchers are Chinese. That's exactly the words out of Jensen Huang, right? And if you have that many AI researchers, then they can really build applications. And also, you probably heard another term that people are joking. Chinese engineers working hours 996. And 996 means 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. That's 996. Yeah. So I don't think that, for Western world, too many people can work 996. But that's how like typical Chinese entrepreneur, they just work 996.
Interesting, yes. What is the most surprising shift in China's business landscape, and what are you expecting in the next couple of years?
I think one thing I have seen is Chinese entrepreneurs' ambition to go global. I think that's the landscape shift that I have observed. When I started a company back in 2007, back then, very few entrepreneurs even thought about going overseas. In 2018, there were a few days when Tencent's market cap exceeded Facebook's. There was a big story on Wall Street. Okay, yeah, Tencent's market cap exceeded Facebook. So up to 2018, most of the Chinese entrepreneurs, they didn't think about going overseas. As long as you can become number one or number two, you'll be doing great as a Chinese company. But now, a lot of entrepreneurs, they have global ambition. They're actually launching startups to challenge global leaders. One example is obviously DeepSea, but DeepSea is not the only example. And there have been a lot of examples of Chinese companies launching applications, challenging the global leaders. Even in the GenAI space, because that's the space that we focus on, pretty much, if you look at text to video space, obviously in the US, we have OpenAI, Sora, Runway, Pika. But in China, you have seen Kling, Pixverse, Vidu, just to name a few. And then, so you're going to see more and more of those Chinese entrepreneurs going global and launching global applications and competing side by side with their global counterpart. I think that's the most interesting thing we have observed.
Maybe focusing on the tech landscape, what are you expecting in the next couple of years, and particularly in your area, in the Gen AI space?
I will see a lot of Chinese applications across different areas like content generation, productivity, and AI for insight, and even some of the AI agents, as I previously indicated. Benchmark, a US VC, just invested in a Chinese company called Manus AI. It's a general purpose AI agent company. And not to mention in the AI intelligence space called Embodies AI, where you build AI brains to control the robotics, right? And obviously, more and more autonomous driving technologies are based on generative AI. So you're going to see more and more Chinese startups launching different applications across all those areas and in challenging their global category leaders.
In this context, how does China's innovation ecosystem compare to Silicon Valley?
I think a lot of the ecosystem will be a bit similar, but there will be some differences. For example, in the US, you have Microsoft, you have Google, you have Amazon, you have Meta. But in China, we have Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, and Baidu. So we have a few big players, and both countries have like pretty solid venture capital, landscape as well. I think one thing that is unique for China is the support from the government. So there are a lot of government-guided funds. For example, CICC is just obviously one example. And every city government, Beijing government, Shanghai government, Shenzhen government, they all have pretty big, like government-guided funds targeting AI-specific areas and also semiconductor-specific areas. I think that will be a unique thing to China, like government-guided funds pretty much sponsoring startups. And then a lot of startups, when they first get started, they can move into kind of like the office buildings owned by the city governments, and then the rent could be, provided with subsidy. I know some of the countries have that kind of support as well, but I think definitely that's something unique to China.
In this context, I just got a question from Emmanuel Odami from Ghana. What kind of systems did the Chinese government put in place to develop Chinese entrepreneurs, probably meaning, generally speaking, Chinese entrepreneurs with the global expansion mindset? I mean, you mentioned part of it, the funds, but is there anything else to be mentioned?
Obviously, we all have heard about the Belt and Road Initiative, right? And then, as I previously mentioned, a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs are building startups targeting the global market. And definitely, I believe that the government would definitely support that kind of initiative. And particularly the global South. I think Chinese startups, they definitely have some advantages. For example, we have seen some startups going along with Huawei to the global South. And then Huawei is a pretty big player in a lot of countries in global South. So you can piggyback with Huawei. You can probably save a lot of customer acquisition costs because Huawei already have a lot of customers in those countries. So I think definitely government is supporting Chinese companies to go overseas. I think that's pretty important. Yeah.
Another question from Matthias Gillner from Hilti. He asks, do the export restrictions on high-end semiconductors not inhibit the progress on development of AI?
It would obviously slow down the pace of China's AI development because you won't be able to access the same kind of compute power that the US counterpart can use. But very interestingly, we all have seen what DeepSeek have launched with the limited compute. So a lot of people are saying that necessity is the mother of invention. So when Chinese entrepreneurs are forced to go deeper and be smarter to come up with better algorithms and better approaches to accelerate their model advancement, then they are forced to do that, and they will do it. So I think if we look at a lot of sanctions before, Huawei was the company that got sanctioned. But look at their revenue growth in the past couple of years. Look at their capacity. I mean, it's not my words. It's Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA's words, saying that, Huawei is a very compelling competitor, right? It just give it a few years, it's going to catch up. So I don't think it's kind of the smart way to sanction, because if you make the advanced chips available to the market, then maybe Huawei and other semiconductor companies, they did not have the incentive to move so quickly, because most of the companies, the client, they can access the best GPUs, but when they are restricted, they are incentivized to move very quickly because tech sovereignty is so important.
Now coming to your company, more or less, what is the role of venture capital and private equity in fostering innovation, be it in China, and you can also compare it with the Silicon Valley, for instance?
I would say more or less the same, because we are all in the business of taking a lot of risks and hoping to, deliver great returns for our investors. I think from that perspective, it's the same. The good thing is that previously, when we invested in entrepreneurs, they only focus on domestic market. But nowadays, we've seen more and more entrepreneurs. They're actually focusing on global market. And more interestingly, we have seen more and more Chinese entrepreneurs, they launch their product on day one to the global market. So they just set their sight on the global market on day one. That we have seen more and more, which is very encouraging and which is great for our business, because if you are just looking at the domestic market, the market may be just restricted to this 1.4 billion people, but in the world, you got 7 billion people. Yep.
There is a question from Thorsten Kramer from Roche. How should innovation-driven companies outside of China strategically position themselves to adapt to the evolving generative AI landscape? How difficult, maybe an addition, how difficult will it be for non-Chinese companies to secure access to capital from government-guided funds, given the current geopolitical and economic climate?
For foreign entrepreneurs, I don't think accessing the government-guided fund is impossible. They just need to find a Chinese partner. So I'm pretty sure, a lot of countries, I mean, not only China, France, UK, and, definitely the United States, all the countries are welcoming, top talent. So if you are talented entrepreneurs, you have a lot of choices. You can go to Silicon Valley, you can go to Paris, you can go to London. Obviously, you can also choose to come to Beijing and Shanghai. I just shared a story. A former Harvard professor, Charles Lieber, just came to China and joined Tsinghua University and doing research. And we're going to see more and more of those cases. So I think it's still doable. But if you are completely a foreigner, chances are you probably need to find a co-founder or partner in China that can help you access the government-guided funding.
But generally speaking, maybe in the same context, in times of de-risking and possibly even decoupling, what advice for Western companies would you have regarding China?
I would say if you are not a US company, you are outside US, then it's probably better for you to kind of like be neutral, kind of like Singapore, Ireland. You kind of be good friends with the United States and China, and you just pick the best model to build your own application. You just pick the best, electronic vehicle for your own purpose. I think that's probably the best approach. And also for a lot of companies, you probably want to diversify your supply chain. So I was flying back from Frankfurt. On the plane, sitting next to me is a guy working for Mercedes. And he was flying to Fuzhou, where they have a plant here. And this guy told me that they also have a plant in South Carolina. They also have a plant in Germany and different countries. So, and they are friends with everybody, which is a good example. Yeah. But that may be a bit tricky if you are a US company nowadays.
Okay, we are running out of time. I couldn't really use all the questions from the audience. I have a very last question to you, and really looking more into the future. Many predict that 2025 and 26, etc., will be a milestone year for the robotics industry, comparable possibly to the iPhone debut for smartphones, with the mass production of humanoid robots. Can China repeat its EV success in humanoid robots?
Yes, definitely. If you look at the humanoids, the applications will be in industrial and manufacturing setting. Initially, that's the biggest one. And if you look at the factories, China has the most factories. So a lot of Chinese manufacturers like CATL, Huawei, Xiaomi, just to name a few, they are all started to focus on this area. But as you indicated, it's the iPhone moment, iPhone 1, 2007. But the real killer apps didn't emerge until a few years down the road. In the case of WeChat, it was only available until 2012, and TikTok 2016, right? So I think it will still have a long way to go, because the brand, the foundation model to control the robotics is the key, and it will take a few years to develop. But definitely, as I previously indicated, every time when there's new technology, it just levels the playing field. It just levels the playing field. And if we're talking about industrial and manufacturing scenarios, and China has the most factories.
Okay. Now we have a very final question because we have many Swiss in the audience, and therefore I put this question as the very last one from Matthias Gillner from Hilti. How do Chinese business people and the Chinese government look at Switzerland, particularly its neutrality? That's a typical question from a Swiss person.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I would say most of the Chinese people see Europeans as neutral. As I said, pretty much, particularly Switzerland, that's kind of like the label. Switzerland is a neutral country, kind of like Singapore, kind of like neutral country. You guys don't want to take sides. And I think it's great to be neutral, and so that you can leverage the best technologies, from all the world. Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure there are a lot of wealthy Chinese people. They have their money in Switzerland because Switzerland is neutral.
Okay, Peter, time is up, unfortunately.
Okay.
We have to come to a close. So first of all, Peter, I want to thank you very much for your
Thank you for having
brilliant
me.
insights. No doubt we are facing disruptions all over, and even disruptors get disrupted. So we learned a lot from you about China and about innovation in China. And the message, I believe, is quite clear. Expect the unexpected. So thank you very much again, Peter. We wish you all the best, and we look forward to having you again at STAR's events. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next webinar in this series is on 6th of June. The speaker is Esther Bia, Managing Partner, C3U Venture Capital based in Shenzhen. I hope to see you then. Goodbye for now. Thank you.